EP35 on the home, and to this, which is something of a scenery double bill, when I decided that it would be quite good fun to do scenery in a couple parts of the layout. So I'll let you get on with the video, not too much of an introduction this time, and I'll speak to you again in just a moment when you see me starting work on the Gardener and the Sexton's cottage. Speak to you then. It's time to return to the scenic work up at Grey Havens, having completed the Vicar's Garden. The final bit is really this top end of the board, which is, as you'll see here, I've already started doing some things. By the station itself, there's some scale model scenery fencing, the same fencing as you can see coming from the side of the station. And I've used one of the running in boards for the station, and this time as a station nameplate for Grey Havens itself, so people know what the station is that they're going to. You may recall in a number of videos I've mentioned that I'd put some papier-mâché down, not a lot of it, but just to try and give some contour for that little triangle. And I think that's actually worked rather well, because on top of that I laid some Javis spring mixture, which is a very yellowy greeny mixture, which is not static at all, but I think it has the look of moss or of lichen that getting caught up in the grass. That was the base on top of the brown painted papier-mâché. I then stuck on some clump foliage, which is the larger pieces of green that you can see, and there is also some underbrush in the forefront here. If I come down, you'll see the slightly different colour of the underbrush, and that gave me the basic shape. And then on top of that, in various places, though not uniformly through it, there's a mix of Pico static grass, of 1, 2 and 4 millimetre static grass, so it gives us a nice height, and also a mix of summer and spring mixture, so we get the variegated colour that's consistent with what I've done elsewhere up here. That was done this morning, and the grass part of it was done this morning, so I'm just leaving that before it all gets the ubiquitous hairspray which holds it in place. If I come out a bit here, and I'll just take you off the camera just for a moment, because I just want to show you something when I can't move the tripod easily. Here we go. In response to one of my to the first video, David Beckett quite rightly pointed out that the hedge along the roadside sort of sprouts from the side of the road, which would have looked odd. And I don't think I'd ever mentioned to anybody what I intended to do here, but I did that also, started yesterday because I had to let something dry. And as you'll see, what you now have along there is a roadside verge all the way along that side of the hedge. That was done using the Javis earth, which I've used before, mixed with the Deluxe Ballast Magic, and then squirted with water to get it to set, so that gave me the basic verge. And then this morning, the static grass, the same mixture as was used in the triangle, went on, but this time I only dabbed the glue in various places, so because I don't think it's not going to look like a lawn there, it is meant to look a bit like a verge. And in the dabbing of the glue, it actually started breaking up what was a quite uniform edge, so I think that's come out rather pleasing, and gives the edge then to the lane as it comes up to the church, because I think, as I've said, the lane it goes nowhere after here. That is the end of the road, so to speak, and it looks a bit like it falls off a cliff. I may have to do something there to show it's the end of the road. So that's taken care of that. The last thing to do, which I can get on with this afternoon, is here. You'll remember that I'd arranged how the houses look there, so that the house actually faces out into the road and sort of masks the fact that the road goes nowhere. You'll see that there is a garden fence has now been constructed. That's scale model scenery. They're not quite in the right positions, but the paving is exactly the same paving as was used in the garden to go to the shed, only that's individual slabs. This is it, all still stuck together, which I've painted up and weathered. and arrived only just a moment ago with the postman was some garden gates, so that I can now finalise the position of everything, so that there will be gates between the shed and the main building, to close off that bit, with some more of the garden fence going from the shed to the wall each side, and from the shed here to the hedge. That will all then be grassed. I'm toying with the idea of trying to put some washing lines in. We'll see if I can pull that off. I think that would be quite fiddly at Engage, but we'll give it a go. And there will also be a small vegetable patch on either side for some beans and some cabbage, which I've got over from the kits that I had for the Vicar's Garden. And once I've done that, that's all the major scenic work. The last things to be done will be along the edge here, the other side of the fence from the pavement. And in part, I want to wait until I paint the rock face, which I want to use a technique that I saw Mr. Deltic use, Thomas Fodor, and I'll put up here a link to his video, which he put up after I asked him a question of how did he achieve, what were the colours that he used, when he showed on an early video him actually doing the painting. And I think it's a real skill, and it's well worth going to see. I want to use those techniques here on this rock face, to give it a bit more life than the uniform brown, which is just the basic forest earth colour that I use as the ground colour. And then you'll remember from the last update that I'd said that I'd got some more gravestones. Well, let's go in a bit. There's one in black and another one there, and there's some slabs, and I think that has broken up what was a very empty area there. The P&D Marsh models gravestones, and also the little benches, and if I come round gently, there are two little benches you'll see there under the trees for people to sit and rest in. I'm quite pleased with that. I don't want to do any more, I think, for the present. I do have some more gravestones which I might add on, and I think I may add a couple more trees here, because they could just do, I think, perhaps with a couple more trees in this section here. And that will be then the upper area finished. But I'll come back once I've completed the area around those houses, which is the major thing. And once that area is done, it really is just a few sort of bits and pieces. So I'll speak to you in a moment when I've done that work. When I was at work, one of the things that struck fear into the heart of my team was when I said, "I've been thinking." And I've been thinking. It occurred to me the original design I had for the cottages was pretty plain, really, with some fence coming across here, a little bit of grass and some vegetables down the end here. But it then occurred to me that this is the gardener's home and the other guy is a sexton. And if the gardener is able to create this, it's highly unlikely he'd have just a little patch of lawn for himself. So things have developed a little. These aren't yet stuck down, so I'll just move them out the way. And then I'll show you my plan. I'll go switch to the desk in a moment to show you the plan for how I want the gardens to be. This remains the same. So the house is now stuck down. The paths are stuck down. This fence here is stuck down, and you will see that there is now a gravel path from the front of the properties, where it comes off the street, and then down and round each side up to the back step. So that's in place, and then these will shortly be stuck into place because I need to do that before I put some fencing in. So we'll pop those back in there. Hooray. And then there will be fencing to create a front and back garden, but then it occurred to me that's where it needs to be a bit more. I think this area was going to be a verge originally, as was this, but they've become the front gardens, and the hedging has returned, hurrah, to give them a front aspect to their properties. So I'll just switch to the desk and just very quickly talk you through what I plan for this area now. And that means actually acquiring some things hopefully at the Perth Model Railway Show, which is on Saturday, and to which I'm going. So here we have the intended plan. Not absolutely to scale, but in fact is slightly smaller. So it really ought to be possible to put all these sorts of things in. This obviously is the house, and then you've got the 2 sheds here. What I propose to do now is to have flower borders down here, because I think that would look good either side of the fencing that will run down. I will put some fencing up the side to meet the fence as it comes across from the shed. And this is the Sexton's area here, which is going to be more grass, I think, and some vegetables along here, possibly some bushes. I'm going to use some of that underbrush. I've experimented with using the underbrush and then just dotting it with very bright red or yellow or pink paint to give the impression that it's some kind of flower bush, and I think I might use that that purpose. The bigger and more ambitious one is going to be the gardener's cottage, because there's the door that goes through here into the vicar's garden. Vegetables along the big hedge, again a flower border, and grass in the back garden. And in the front garden I'm going to see if we can pull off something along having 2 a circular flower border here, and then a circular one in the middle of the lawn, and then lawn all around it. And again, I may use some of that underbrush dotted along the hedgerow, but I think that will look better. So it'll be a few days before I come back, although only the merest blink of time between this and the next section, once I've got the materials that I'm going to put in, so that I can start work on doing those gardens. So speak to you again in a few days' time. There we have the completed gardens. I found actually I had some of the apple trees and hydrangeas left over, but also the little flowering shrubs and the flower borders I bought yesterday. And I fashioned the washing line out of a bit of square plasticard and some very fine wire that is used for jewellery making. Now I suspect that it's a bit over scale, but if you think that a normal washing line is 1/4 of an inch, maybe 5 or 6/8 of an inch, to do that in 1/148 scale would give you a very, very thin thread indeed. So we'll just have to accept that one. You can see along this line the cabbages and tomato plants, and then some bushes, which I've used just a few daubs of very bright acrylic paint, the primary colours pretty much. I tried it with orange over here and I'm not sure that's worked as well. Let's push the light over so you can see better. There we go. And then these are meant to be primroses, but they're huge. I mean, they stand about 5 foot tall. So I'm just taking them as a very large flower for the central flower bed. I've managed also to complete the verge going up and round, and this area got a bit more scenic grass as well when I was doing back here. So that really completes all the scenic work for the houses and the vicarage and the churchyard, and really just leaves detailing up here, which will be linked with painting the face to give it just not such a uniform brown look. But that is for another day. So that completes this bit of scenic work, but not content with doing scenic work down one end of the layout. I also decided to do a little bit of scenic work at the other end, and the next part of the video takes you to up to Sharky's End, where I started to detail in what is actually the hardest part of the layout to reach. So speak to you again in a moment. In this section of the video, we're going to look at my attempt, if I can pull it off, to do this corner. Now this is the furthest part of the layout where I can't actually reach very well, so I'm going to attempt to build a hillside essentially for that corner off the layout, and then just fit it in position as a single piece. Because I can probably reach over to do that, but I think trying to work over there is going to be too difficult. And I want to really do that corner on the principle of working from the back to the front, so that if I just zoom out a little bit, all these buildings here don't keep getting biffed, and I can start actually beginning to fix these down where they're finally going to be. So if I just take you gently over to the desk, the idea I have, the white card that you can see as the base there is taken off of the template that was used to fill in the empty section that was at the back there, if you remember from the last video. And I'm sure that providing I broadly keep within that triangle, there is plenty of clearance for trains to go by, although I don't want to make this hillside an exact triangle, so at the front I may fashion it a little bit. As you can see, if I come to the side, this is a piece of a box from Dapol, I think, which has some struts inside also of card. You can just see one of them poking through there. And I'm filling it presently with strips of paper. We had an Amazon parcel come in the week, which was a huge box and a tiddly thing inside it, and lots of this paper, so that's getting repurposed. And what I propose then to do is to put some plaster cloth over it to give me my broad structure that I can then start doing some kind of landscaping on. So the next thing is to put the plaster cloth on and see whether that makes any sense, whether it's going to work or not for me. Because if it isn't, I can easily try something else, but we'll see if this works. So I'll come back once we've got the plaster cloth on and we'll see if it's worked. Well, here we are the next day and the plaster cloth has dried. I'm just amazed at the outcome, because all that is some card and some paper with some plaster cloth over the top, and I just let it dry as it would. I didn't try to fashion it in any way, and just let everything sink and sag and do what it wants to do. And if I show you the contour there, I'm not sure if I set out to provide that outcome, I'd have done it half as well as it's done it on its own. So perhaps less modelling is more. The next thing to do is to cover this in the brown basic paint that I've used as the basic colour for the earth on the model, on the layout, and then to think about grassing it. I think it would be basically grass. I think that will be just some static grass to go over the top of that, and then use on the edges here some underbrush and clump foliage, I think. Maybe a tree, don't know, have to think about that. And set them to give an edge here that will hide the fact that this is basically a triangle, because the space that's there is basically a triangle. And this just provides the main focus point and obviously other detailing I can reach to. And this morning I put this on the layout and I ran 2 tank engines, one of which was hauling the Autocoach, and they all go by. It was slightly too big at one place, so I had to cut the front off. So the next thing for us to do really is to get this painted up and then get the scenic grass and the clump foliage on. And once I've done that, I'll come back and we can see it on the layout and see whether it's working. Okay, speak to you in a moment. Well, here we are with it on the layout now, and I completed the work that I said that I would do. I used some 2 mixtures of clump foliage just pulled apart. I rather like this clump foliage because at end gauge it really has the look of sort of small trees or very large bushes. And I particularly like, I don't know if you can see on the left there, the way that the bushes cast a shadow onto the backboard, because they're set just slightly inside to give a little bit of depth. And I have to say I'm rather pleased with that as a first go of making scenic work of that kind, which sort of emboldens me with other work that I've got to do. That's not yet stuck down. It's obviously perfectly happy there, and as you can see, if I take the engine forward, the engine passes It's probably a bit tight on the outside, but it's fine. I think it's prototypical for how close an embankment might come down to the line. And I'll have to have a look when I come to do the ballasting for that area, how the ballast lies and whether I need to be just a bit careful with sorting the ballast out. But that really completes this bit of scenic work. The other scenic work to the sides of it, I painted the area so that it's brown and not cork. And there will be ballast to go down there, and I'll carry on with the bushes along a little way until they sort of peter out as the cess of the ballast takes over. But that really completes this section of the video. Well, I hope you enjoyed those 2 bits of landscaping. I had great fun doing them. And the results are really very pleasing, particularly the gardens. It finishes that end off quite nicely. And also I'm still amazed at how the landscape, the formation of the landscape came about by leaving things alone. So I shall leave things alone more often and see what comes of it. If you've liked the video, please do give it the thumbs up. That's always very good, and share it if you wish. And if you haven't subscribed to me already, well, please do. It'd be great to have you along, and hit the bell notification so you know when I've uploaded a video. And please do comment. If you've got any comments or any questions, then please put them in there. I really look forward to receiving them and being able to respond to them. So the next video, I think maybe in about a week, maybe a week's time. I promised a slight review of the gimbal with which I've taken some of the shots of the trains that you've seen, or the locomotives that you've seen today. And there's 1 or 2 other bits and pieces that I've been doing on the layout, and also just talking about what the next things are that I'll be working on Elvenhome. But until we meet again, bye-bye.